Well, hi, everybody. I'd like to thank you all for being here this evening on behalf of Tamarack Foundation for the Arts, West Virginia State University Extension Service, and our Creative Entrepreneur Fellows. I'm Robbie Moore. I'm the Arts Extension Educator for Tamarack Foundation for the Arts, and in partnership with West Virginia State University Extension Service. I'm excited to get to hear from our 2024 Creative Entrepreneur Fellows this evening and hear all about their work. This year was my first year working in this capacity with CEF, and it's been a pleasure to get to know these talented artists and to learn more about what they create and how they make their work. In the next, over the next hour, all of you will get to hear their stories and artist statements. And over the last 6 months, the fellows have learned financial, networking, and other entrepreneurial skills to better their business practice. We worked with the artists to create bespoke videos and photos so they can use that to promote themselves as they continue their careers in the arts. To prepare for this presentation, the fellows have worked with artist and educator Jennifer Rice. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So glad you was able to join us tonight. The fellows also created new artwork for the fellowship, and you all can see that artwork at Taylor Books Annex Gallery in Charleston, West Virginia until September 30th. And I think that there are some sneak peeks on our social media too. So if you can't make it to Charleston before the 30th, you can check out the work there. I also want to encourage you to follow these artists on their socials. Artists, if you want to put your socials in the chat, that would be great. But also you can contact me later and I can get you in touch with them. Join their mailing list and support them with likes and comments, and maybe even add one of their works to your collections. From my perspective, one of the best things about the fellowship is creating meaningful, long-lasting relationships with other artists and art institutions from across the state. This is truly a fellowship, and I know that they've gained friendships that will last a lifetime. If you are a visual artist or you know someone who could benefit from this fellowship, I encourage you to apply or spread the word about our next cycle, which will be starting soon, and we'll have more information about that on our socials and website. In a moment, you'll hear a short presentation from each fellow. We suggest that you use speaker view to fully enjoy the presentations. After the presentations, each artist will go to breakout rooms, and we encourage all of you to visit their rooms and ask any questions you have for them. And I think to get started, Dominica will just move you randomly to a room, and then you can move freely as you from room to room. If you have any issues, though, please let me or Dominica know, and we'll help you as best as we can. Dominica will stay in the main space throughout, and that part with the breakout rooms and the questions that part of our program will last about 30 minutes. And so we expect to be wrapping up around 7:30. I have a few more things to mention, and then we'll get started. And while I do that, please go ahead and mute your mics if you haven't already for this first part of our presentation. Feel free to add words of encouragement to the chat for all the artists. I'd like to mention and thank our sponsors for this program: Truist Foundation, Huntington Bank, John and Lucille Pianfetti Foundation, the Halpern Family Foundation, the Charles and Mary Fane Glott Felty Foundation, Hamilton Family Foundation, Ann Bradley, and Randy Cox. Thank you so much. If you'd like to join this prestigious list and support TFA and West Virginia artists, please contact us and we'll help you reach that goal. One last thing, two last things. One of our fellows can't join us this evening on the call because they have COVID. So please send Peyote Nikolai well wishes. We'll hope to hear from them really soon. And the last thing is another great way to learn more about this program, the artists, and all of the wonderful things that we do at TFA is to follow us on all of our socials and to join our mailing list. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first artist, Sara Cottingham.
There we go. All right, everybody. Hi, my name is Sara Cottingham. I'm an artist based in Morgantown, West Virginia. And tonight I'm going to tell you about my woodcut and linocut prints I make, which are inspired by nature, history, and rural life. So I'm a self-taught artist. These days I mostly focus on printmaking, though I've worked a fair bit with charcoal, pastels, and a little bit with painting. And my artwork falls mostly under three main bodies of work. Tonight I'm just going to focus on the first, which is largely historical scenes that tie into West Virginia's industrial past. For these, I go for stark, mostly black and white images, which you can see are pretty different from my other two bodies of work, which tend to be bright and colorful. Now, I am not a full-time artist, far from it. I have a very demanding career as a community development consultant. It's work I'm really passionate about, and it consumes most of my time and my bandwidth. So this means I have to be really selective about the art projects and the opportunities I pursue. When it comes to choosing a piece, choosing a subject matter, choosing the reference for what I want to do, I'm looking for material that I want to spend weeks at a time absorbed in studying. And generally, at least right now, the pieces I feel called to make are those that go hand in hand with my work. For my consulting business, I spend my days helping rural communities who are trying to figure out what comes next. I work really closely with 10 towns in the Monongahela National Forest. They are reinventing themselves while still honoring their past and where they come from. Serving these towns, it's why I get up in the morning. It's my jam, and it's a big part of why I came to West Virginia and why I choose to live here. So those stories, the people, the places, the scenes that I encounter through that work, it captivates me. And it's largely what I feel compelled to share through my artwork. So my process almost always starts with a drawing. And generally, those are based on historic reference photos. I'll use an example from my most recent print. Last year, I was chosen to do 2 commission pieces for the newly reopened Tigert Hotel in Elkins. While they totally redeveloped the building, and I got to tour it while it was still under construction. And during that process, they collected all sorts of junk from old found items from the hotel's original days that were in the junk pile. And I got the opportunity to go through it, pulled out a couple cool finds, one of which was this historic photo that showed the facade of the building in its kind of seedier days as it was falling into decline. Also found reams and boxes full of this old ledger paper that says the night auditor's report. A lot of it was filled out by hotel staff. It had notes about the number of loads of laundry that were handled in a night and room service and things like that. But they did find some of the original blank paper, which I was able to snatch a couple copies of, snapped a picture of that reference photo, and it became the inspiration for my latest print. So once I have made a drawing, my interpretation of my reference material, the next step is to transfer that image to my block, which is either a linoleum block or a piece of wood. And then to meticulously carve out my detailed image using small chisels and gouges. Most often I use linoleum for a linocut print, simply because it's a lot easier to carve. But I do sometimes do woodblock prints. The 2 large-scale prints I did for the Tigert were woodcuts. For those, I felt it was really important to use wood. That whole art installation was dedicated to the region's timber history. So I used a high-grade cherry plywood. Seemed fitting, cherry being a native Appalachian hardwood. It did make my life a little bit more difficult, given that wood is a lot harder and slower to carve. And these pieces, as you can see here, were significantly bigger than any other prints I had ever done before or since. But at the end of the day, wood is a very satisfying medium to carve. And the takeaway, the block ends up being almost a work of art in and of itself. Once my block is ready, I apply a thin amount of oil-based ink to the block, lay my paper down, run them through a press, Compared to other forms of printmaking, like what you'll hear from Zach later tonight, relief printmaking is really pretty simple. If you have the patience and the hand and arm strength, you can print by hand, just even with a simple spoon, rubbing the back of your paper. I, however, lack the patience and the hand strength, so I prefer to use a basic etching press here in my home studio, which doubles as my consulting office. It hides in the closet while I'm on important work meetings, comes out at night. It's pretty great. However, it is small. So most of my pieces, are pretty small. For bigger pieces like those commission prints for the Tigert, which the bigger block was like about 4 feet in length. I have to use actually for that a custom built etching press, which could handle that size. So now I'll share a couple finished final pieces. This was the final product for that example I gave, the Tigert facade. It is based on that picture I found in the junk pile. It's printed on the vintage paper I found in the junk pile. I was able to get 6 sheets of that paper, so there's 6 prints in this limited edition. This copy didn't have too many tears, but some of them, they've got the wear and tear. If you look at it closely, the paper's discoloring. I mean, it's many decades old, but it adds to the character and the feel of this vintage, going for the historical image here. The Rossing Mill is one of the 2 prints I made for the Tigert Hotel last year. The art installation was dedicated to the timber history of the Monongahela National Forest, so it's a subject matter near and dear to my heart. I chose to capture a scene based on a historic photo of the log yard and the Rossing Mill in the town of Spruce, which was a lost town. So it was a timber boom town that is no more. So it's one of the ghost towns, and that was what this art installation was dedicated to. So I chose the image largely because I was in love with that reference photo. It's a striking image. It really captures the scale of the industry that took place there. And it's especially striking because today there is nothing left in that site. You can visit it. If you look really hard, you can find some stone foundations of that building, but otherwise that's all that's left. So in the hotel, this piece sits on the 3rd floor. You come out of the elevators and there it is. They've done a nice job curating it with maps and reference, materials to set it in context. But even as a standalone image, I think this one captured what I was ultimately going after, which was that kind of haunting, ethereal vibe of this moment in time. And this is the last piece I'll share. The second piece for the Tigert Hotel. We were asked to do a piece for the lobby that symbolized how our lost town linked to the other towns and just the greater region as a whole. So I have always been struck by this statistic that in the grand heyday of the West Virginia timber industry from like 1870 to 1920, they cut 30 billion board feet of timber, which is enough to build a 13-foot wide boardwalk from Earth to the moon, which is staggering. And so thinking about connections, all of the timber towns back in those days were linked by rail. Today, those rail grades are largely being converted into trails for recreation. And the trail that went through Spruce, my town, I chose because I have been personally involved in the economic development work there for those trails. It's part of Snowshoe's mountain bike ride center, attracting people from all over the world. So this was my interpretation of how all these things come together, linking past, present, and future. So next steps for me in my art business. People have been asking me for posters of those 2 prints I made for the Tigert Hotel. I have them made. They're sitting here on my other table. I'm just in the process of launching my website. It is live now. I've got the link here. The store is not yet active, but I will very soon be ready to process payments there. There'll be the prints and posters will be for sale at the Tigert Hotel and on my website. I also have original prints, including some copies of those very large scale wood blocks behind me, will be for sale on my website. I also hope to do more pieces that fit in this category of West Virginia's timber history, because again, it really speaks to me. But the reality is I'm very slow. It takes me a long time. I bit off a lot this year. I launched my own consulting business this spring, and it's growing a lot faster than I expected. So I'm back to my eternal struggle, trying to find a balance between doing all of these things I love without killing the joy. So I'll let you know how it goes. Wish me luck, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really great. Uh, Now we'll move along to our next artist and fellow, Matthew Smith.
Hi, everyone. Just get my screen shared here. Hope everybody's having a great day. All right. Let's set my little thing here. All right. Can I get a thumbs up if I'm being heard, Robbie? Good? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Smith, and I am a visual artist and illustrator. This wonderful photo was by, I believe, sorry, my Zoom is also over here. Not supposed to see that. There we go. Sorry, everybody. There we go. This wonderful photo was by Braden Maddox, who came and filmed us at our house here, which was great. But just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Beckley, West Virginia. I'm currently living and working in Charleston, West Virginia. I went to Marshall University originally for graphic design. And I shifted into painting and illustration, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But I mostly taught myself using online tutorials, books, mentorships, and just good old-fashioned experimentation. I really got my start with painting with watercolor. I was doing it here and there in college, and there was a couple of assignments, but largely I was really drawn to narrative-based illustrations. And so I started making these pictures and painting them and making prints of them. And so I really fell in love with works by J.C. Leyendecker and N.C. Wyeth and Norman Rockwell, where there's a formality to it, and there's a really beautiful painting, but there's also a story, and I really like that narrative type of work. I also started working digitally, and working digitally, I think is kind of shocking for some people, but it really taught me how to paint with opaque paint. You have unlimited redos and every color you can imagine, and no problems with layering. So I really taught myself with the light and color and a lot of the more formal things that I didn't really get in college. It gave me the confidence to move on to more opaque mediums. And those paintings have done very well for me. I sell them currently on my website. They're available at Lost Appalachia in Fayetteville, as well as Hoot and Howl in Morgantown. And I also do in-person events as well. But as I started painting with gouache and experimenting with different types of styles, I also started working with heavy body acrylic. So the small salamander on the left, I got some wood blocks and I just wanted to paint on them. I just wanted to try it out. And I found that I really needed a different type of paint. So I started getting the heavy body paint, and I just fell in love with it. I also like working in gouache, acrylic gouache on panels, and I still love working on paper. But as I was learning these new materials and new ways of working, I started to want a little bit more, and I moved up to panels. And I wanted to really learn the materials, and I was finding myself getting really frustrated with complicated things like perspective and characters and posing. So I tried to strip out some of that stuff and focus on form and simple compositions that did mean something to me. I'm going through my phone and looking for stuff to paint. I kept favoriting pictures of food that meant something to me, or that I harvested or got from my parents' garden or something like that. And so I I really started to experiment and expand, and even starting to work with oil paint. And so after I got this under my belt, I applied for a grant through West Virginia Arts, Culture, and History. It's a professional development grant. And since I had kind of figured out the base of how I liked working like this for a couple of years, I pulled the trigger and started painting really large, going from 3 foot by 4 foot up to 54 by 60. And I'll talk more in depth about these pieces in a minute, but whenever I started this, I had never stretched canvas before, and this was the one in the middle is actually the first piece that I stretched, which I painted it first and then stretched it, which led to a lot of issues down the road, which I had to correct. But I learned a lot, and it looks kind of crooked in the picture, but that's because I had to make my phone as wide a possible view to get it all, because it's about as wide as my room that I was painting in. So another reason that I started moving away from paper, not that I dislike paper, but it's really hard to achieve this kind of texture on anything but canvas or panels. And I started really enjoying the thickness of the medium, and trying out different stuff, things like that. So talking a little bit about process, my sketchbook is really the cornerstone of my practice. I haven't done a painting that I haven't drawn first. It's part of either the ritual or the process or some part of it, but everything really I'm drawing at least a few times before I start painting it. A typical progression from a sketch to a finished painting looks something like this, where it's a really simple doodle in my sketchbook that I did maybe idly or thinking about something, moving on to figuring out some of the more formal elements and what I'd like to be in the picture, how I want to lay it out. Okay, maybe this can be a painting, and trying things out here and there, and to the final piece. Generally, by the time I get to the stage in the middle, I generally know if I can do what I'm wanting to do, and occasionally I'll do a full color study or a value study, but in general, I know where things need to go with a drawing like this. I also am really interested in photography, so I take a lot of pictures with my phone, and as a part of the grant, the professional development grant, I got a nicer camera. So I've been taking more photos, and I want to use more photos that I take for more paintings. A typical progression of a photographic reference to a painting is like this, which is kind of embarrassingly simple, but I have a photo that I take, strip out the background if I don't want to have a very detailed background, take away the color and desaturate it, and then the posterize filter reduces it to 3 values, so light, medium, and dark. And then at this point, I really don't need a lot more to make a full picture. So I will usually proceed at this point. And you can see with this one, it's more of a photo bash experiment where I was wanting to have more than one picture inside a picture. And so experimenting like that, and like with this one, it's exciting to me. It lets me get my idea out really quickly. There are sketches and drawings in between these, but in general, this is like how I'm approaching these types of works. And then this one, you can see it's really a crop, simplifying things and amplifying some of the colors that I like, and then it's the picture. I don't read a lot of James Joyce, so this is kind of a roundabout way of saying, in the particular is the contain the universal. I will say the universal is in the specific, which really, what that means to me is that my very specific images, experiences, memories, the magical quality of art lets me transmit those feelings potentially to a viewer, despite distances or time or anything. And I think that that's pretty special. And the more that I do it, the more that I'm really into it. So this specific body of work really came from drawing on those specific experiences to connect to people in West Virginia with their history of growing food for sustenance, really. And that's what a lot of the interviews that I conducted for the project were around. The core tenets of my process and practice, the personal connection is at the top for me. If I'm not interested in a personal way, generally, it's hard for me to finish the picture. I always need a value structure. Figuring out my light, medium, and dark is tantamount to making sure I get all the way through the picture. And then the color temperature and chromatic shifts are really to help me stay interested and to make it more visually appealing and interesting to people. As a part of my grant and getting that camera, I said that I would document my process. So that resulted in a lot of hours of me filming myself and working on camera. And I've edited all of those together. They're actually on my website right now. The link that I put in the chat will take you to my sort of link tree with the unreleased videos on there. I'm probably still going to tweak them a little. But since I learned so much from watching people paint on the internet and taking workshops and really just observing, I really wanted to do that for other people as well. And if I can get one person to paint based on a video, then that's a huge win for me. Some of the context for these pieces with this one, it's on view at Taylor Books right now, really informed by me harvesting vegetables before my dad got home from work, after I got home from school, and laying them out on the back porch. Hopefully I picked all the good ones, and I just that's it. That's the whole piece is based around that experience. And it just was important to me, and somebody that I really trust talking about with things like this, they said that's a good a reason as any for a picture. So this one is similar as well. This one is a little bit more technique driven, definitely experimental. I wanted to mix as many of the mediums that I was working in into one piece. And so there's oil, crayon on top of the acrylic paint, and crayons and oil paint and lots of things. And I stretched it after the fact, like I said. So a lot of learning on this one. It's the first canvas I ever stretched. So it really was an experiment, and I like how it came out at the end. This one, based on the interviews that I conducted with Ernie Morgan, who's the head of the Mercer County Tailgate Market and has been for 30 years, as well as my parents. They all had experiences canning vegetables, growing up, and preserving food. And since my family, we didn't do that. We froze everything. But I wanted to capture those experiences and put them in a picture. And I've had a lot of people that have connected to this one as well. And I'm really happy about that. It's a little surprising because it was so specific feeling, but people have connected to it. Right now I'm working in some smaller things. I'd like to get better with oil paint. And so I generally will try things out small. And so I will make up a few, 6x6 canvases and just run through a bunch of pictures, trying to get a little bit better with that technique. Here you can see my studio where I do all my work. On the left is the small art area. On the right, you can see my computer setup and digital area, and then my easel opposite that. But unfortunately, this is not the reality. Right now, this room looks like this because we are moving. We are hopefully closing on a house next week. And unfortunately, my office was sacrificial for getting things packed up. And, I'm kind of mourning this space a little bit. Made a lot of work in there, and, I lost a pet in there. And there's a lot of memories that's associated with the studio. But I'm really excited to set up the new one and continuing on with making more work. You can find me at Matt Smith Makes on everywhere they'll let me make a username. My website is just mattsmithmakes.com. And again, if you go to the link tree that's in the chat, that will take you to the various different things. I also It's not set up yet, but I am on Fair for wholesale materials, fair.com/mathsmithmakes. But that's my time. This is what the page looks like for my links, for my videos. They're all about 10 minutes. So worked really hard on them. It would be cool if you checked them out. They're not really fully out yet. So feedback, extremely welcome. And I think that's it. So thank you guys so much. And I can't wait to hear from everyone else.
Thanks, Matt. That was
No
great.
worries.
All right. Now we will hear from Amanda Jane Miller.
Hello, everybody. I'm Amanda Jane Miller. I'm a painter and illustrator. I'm a textile and fiber artist in Charleston. Get my screen up for you guys. Okay. So I'm going to tell you about what my art means and share some of my past work, and then I'll talk about my current process and the work that I have hanging at Taylor Books right now for the Creative Fellowship exhibition. I work primarily in watercolor and ink, and I mix in block print and screen print techniques and digital illustration as well. I spin wool and I weave textiles and create yarn and knitted pieces. My work is very internal. It explores the relationship between my inner psychological space and my external environment, and namely how these two realms interact and affect me both physically and emotionally. Very emotional, sensitive artist. So specifically looking at West Virginia, there's memories and energy here that we sort of carry with us, and the weight of that affects us too. And so my work is asking, what does that weight look like, and what kind of storytelling comes from that? There's a tension between industry and nature here, that between the past and the future, tension between family and community structures. And that tension runs through my work, where I'm thinking about self-protection, defense mechanism, cognitive dissonance. And so I will often portray themes of grief and isolation with bright colors and storybook imagery. My work is also whimsical and happy and escapist. I'm inspired by nature. I spend an enormous amount of time in nature, gardening, playing, making artwork outside, daydreaming. I love to draw simple hand tools and utilitarian crafts like brooms and shovels. Love to draw wood stoves. My mark making takes influence from needlework and stitches, and I'm often trying to portray basic day-to-day life-sustaining tasks and tools within a fantastical environment. And again, the tension that creates visually. I'm trying to convey the energy of work process that are salt of the earth and that keep us alive. So this is my most recent work for the fellowship exhibition that's up at Taylor Books right now. I took this opportunity to revel in all of my favorite techniques and bring them all together and just be really greedy and do everything I want all at once in the same piece. So the black that you see here, that's silk screen print with oil-based plastisol ink. There's watercolor washes, there's some ink pen details, there's block prints made from hand-carved lino-cut stamps that I've been working on for many years, like past 2 decades. They are on cotton muslin fabric that I've sewn into banners, and the hanging thread is my own hand spun wool. It's from local sheep that I've either worked with, raised, or knew personally. And this one is dyed with golden thread, goldenrod flowers, I believe. So this body of work goes deep into exploring the beginning of my art process and how and why I started making pictures. From the time I was a small child, as far back as I can remember, I used drawing to self-soothe and regulate my emotions as an anxious kid. Drawing was my way of processing the world around me and understanding my experiences and calming my little nervous system. So of course I spent a lot of time immersed in children's books, and illustrated storybooks were and still are my biggest inspirations, and along with cartoons and animated movies. So I would escape into the little worlds in my books, and by way of drawing, I continued making my own worlds that I could customize and give my little kid brain a sense of control. So I wanted this work to be escapist and disarming and magical, and really call back to simple themes that got me started drawing. And the presentation is important to me also because these are hanging textile pieces. So that is a nod to the women in my family and their work traditions that I'm carrying on in various ways now. And the tactile physicality of the banners is meant to sort of ground and balance the fantastical nature of the images. So there's a little cottage that I want to run away and live in it right now. So here's me at my loom. This is a loom I inherited from my grandmother weaving. So if you're interested in checking out my fiber work and process, you can go to Hot Stove Fiber. It's on Facebook and Instagram. And then my fine artwork at mandajanemiller.com, also on Facebook. So thank you for listening. I appreciate y'all. I will stop screen share.
That was great, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now we're going to hear from Kristen Colebank.
Thank you, Robbie. Let me get my screen set up here. Okay, one question I want to make sure, did this change for you all when I did that? I'm going to guess no. Let me draw my other one. How about this one? Did that switch?
It switched slides, but not what
Yeah.
we're.
Okay, that's why I just want to, I have it open twice somehow, so that's why. Okay. Hi, I am Kristen Colebank. I'm a representational painter with a specialization in watercolor, and I live in Wardensville, Hardy County, which is in West Virginia's Potomac Highlands. I create representational paintings inspired by extraordinary everyday elements that are found in rural areas and small towns in West Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley. Because I grew up in a rural community, I feel connected to and care about these places. I identify painting subjects by intuitively responding to flashes of contrast and pattern that I see out of the corner of my eye, that flash by the windshield, or that I discover in snapshots that were never intended to be painting references. I've learned to trust these glimmers as points of entry for painting subjects that ordinarily might be overlooked, or for reframing subjects so they can be seen in a different way. I work primarily in watercolor because I'm drawn to its luminosity, and I find it satisfying to balance watercolor spontaneity with careful decisions. Using photo references, sketches, and time spent painting en plein air, my goals are to feature and re-examine subjects that typically would be considered inconsequential. I present these subjects with care and dignity because I want my work to prompt reflection and spark appreciation for place. Okay, so again, I want to double check that I managed to change to a new slide.
Looking good.
Okay, all right. So I thought a way to dig a little bit deeper into that artist statement would be to break down into a why, what, and how for my work. So for my why, I want to talk about two formative influences. The first of these is this watercolor by Lotus McDowell. And I first saw this watercolor when I was in junior high. This painting depicts a collection of buildings that had been in the community of Fellowsville, West Virginia, Preston County. And this collection of dilapidated buildings was across the creek from my elementary school. I went by these buildings every day on the school bus. And to be honest, it's the kind of thing that a lot of people probably see in their communities. It's sort of buildings that are crumbling, junk pile cars. And it was not exactly something to feel proud of as you went by it. However, when I saw this painting, it totally changed my perception of that corner, and I never saw it in the same way again. So that was a very early lesson for me in understanding the power of art to change perceptions. The other influence I'll point to actually was my work career. I spent 20 years working at newspapers. And as one of my jobs in that career, I had a daily exercise in composition because I was designing news pages like the page you see here. And that was a tremendous exercise that helped me with my compositional skills. The other element with my news career was that I had the privilege at the Winchester Star of working with 4 tremendous photojournalists, and to see how they worked, how they framed their photograph, and how they cropped photographs was very important to me to understand how to frame images for best effect. So for my subjects, I thought it would be helpful to go through and explain to you the first time I ever found one of these glimmers, as I call them, in a photograph that was never intended to be a painting. The photograph to the left, that was taken because I had my young nephew staying with me, and he was bored out of his mind. And I was trying to figure out how to entertain him. Frankly, he wanted to go home. And on a lark, I suggested that we go into town and we, quote, scout for paintings. Because for my nephew and his sisters, I was always Aunt Kristen, the artist. So we wandered up and down the very small main street of Wardensville, randomly snapping photographs. And again, this is just to amuse the child. A couple of weeks later, I realized I needed to take these photographs off of my camera card, and I opened them up with the intention of deleting them. And this was the first image that I opened up, and it just struck me. And I realized that there was so much potential there, so much that just spoke to me in terms of that idea of pattern and contrast and the rhythm of this, and what an interesting subject matter that I could develop a painting from. And I realized that I had foolishly been chasing paintings for years in so-called beauty spots when I had so many subjects that were right there under my nose, and I had never been able to see them before. So this photograph and my experience with it helped open my mind and open my eyes to what was right here around me. So these are two paintings I've developed from this original reference, and I can do a lot more with it. In fact, I intend to do a few more different approaches to this photograph, but I continue at this point to explore and search for these hidden gems that are right here around me. So for and how, here's a little bit of my process. So again, I had a glimmer experience driving by this house. It is right around the corner from my house. And I finally kind of figured out that it was a certain time of day that the light would shine in on the porch, that was what was causing me to react to it. So I talked my husband into driving up and down the road so I could take snapshots and try not to draw the attention of my neighbors. But once I get the snapshot, then I start playing with it in Photoshop. So again, that's sort of that influence from my news career. I crop it into a composition that works for me. And I like to do a lot of compositions in squares. I find it an interesting challenge to do a dynamic composition in such a symmetrical and balanced shape. Once I have it cropped in the way I like it, I do a line drawing. I may also do value studies as I need to. And I draw relatively small. I scan it and then I enlarge it to the size that the painting will actually be. I use a light table to transfer my drawings onto my watercolor paper. And that's actually an important thing for me because then if I mess up, I have that drawing, I just transfer a fresh drawing because my early washes in a watercolor, a very traditional method of working are wet and loose. And I then sort of drop down to smaller brushes as I develop and darken and glaze. And when I get to the end of a painting, I try very hard to slow down, to look at it a lot, and to try to not overwork it. So to conclude, I thought this image of a painting was a good intersection that demonstrates the influences, the subject matter, and my painting practice, my why, what, and how. This house is a landmark house in this community. It's named for the Warden family that gave Wardensville its name. But the glimmer that attracted me to this scene is not the house, it's this plant and the geometry of the house as a backdrop to the plant. So this isn't one of these situations where I see it while I'm driving and I had to stop and turn around and park in a precarious place to start taking photographs because I knew I had to capture it at that moment. This painting demonstrates that I have come to the point that I'm open to seeing this house in a different way, that I was capable of recognizing the glimmer, that I can use my sense of composition to build a framework capable of balancing the elements and to be willing to focus on what was very important. And finally, I had to be inventive with my watercolor skills to fulfill the painting's promise. So this house and scene are presented in a completely different way than a typical painting would be of this house. And so I thought this was truly an opportunity to highlight the extraordinary in the everyday. So I thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you might be interested in my work and follow me using the contact information I have there on the screen. And I will continue to work and search for these glimmers to elevate and celebrate the extraordinary everyday that surround us and makes our life a much more interesting place.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Last but not least is Zach Fitchner.
Hi, everyone. So I will get my screen up and shared. Can everyone see all right? Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Robbie, for that introduction. So I am Zach Fitchner, and this is my presentation. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Before I begin with the keynote, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude for the people and support that I've received. And to recognize their contributions to my professional development over the past 6 months. Some of them are here with us today, which just codifies their commitment to selflessness, their loyalty to our way of life, and their love of art. So this has been a truly special experience, and I just wanted to say my heart is full. So I'd like to thank, and I'm sorry for the list, but I'd like to thank Robbie. Thank you, Robbie, and Mary, Dominica, Braden, Susan, Candy, Renee, Barry Kaufman has been super supportive. The Tamarack Foundation, the selection committee, our former fellows who we got a chance to meet, and that was fantastic. And I can't forget my 2024 cohort of fellows. I'm very grateful to have met each and every one of you. So thank you all. So I'm a visual artist recently based out of Charleston, West Virginia, but now working in Columbus, Ohio. I've made that transition just recently. I studied studio art at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville, Florida, and I received my MFA at the University of Arizona. And I've spent the majority of my professional career making art and teaching at the university level, most recently at West Virginia State University. I have work in a lot of different permanent collections across the United States, in Australia, London, and Slovakia. And I'd like to just say, I am the sum of my experiences, my sense of place, space, my socio and economic standing, class, lineage. I'm a father, a husband, a friend, a neighbor, and many other things. But my calling, I like to say, and my vocation has been that of an artist. And so the reason that I go over all these different things about who I am is because it's incredibly important to the type of work that I like to make. So just a quick statement on my creative research, or my artist statement, you could say. My artistic practice is centered around project-based bodies of work that investigate themes of identity through various media, including printmaking, photography, mixed media, installation, and some soft sculpture as well. Each body of work explores unique but interrelated lines of inquiry into identity and its constructs. By utilizing these diverse media, I aim to create immersive works that engage viewers on several different levels. Currently, my work is focused on the aftermath of 2020, particularly the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the social justice movements that gained momentum during that time. My primary technique is mezzotint, which is a printmaking process that allows for intricate gradations of light and dark, giving prints a rich sort of velvetyness with a really, really rich quality while recalling art from distant times of the past. That's one of my main reasons, is I'm trying to kind of draw upon these historical traditions. This choice is very intentional. Again, I'm trying to draw parallels between historical events and the artistic mediums used to portray them in their heyday. My process involves extensive drawing, writing, reading, research, both in terms of texts and with physical media, followed by careful construction and continual reassessment and revision to ensure that each piece fully encapsulates the intended concepts. My work is heavily inspired by the historical parallels that I see between past and present atrocities, human suffering, the use of religion as a tool for manipulation, and natural disasters. The works of Francisco Goya and Peter Bruegel the Elder have profoundly influenced my content, medium, and stylistic approach, particularly their ability to blend subtle stylization with naturalistic depiction. By drawing on these historical references, I aim to create work that resonates with contemporary issues, calls into question closely held belief systems, and portray what I see to be the general nature of human experiences and the ways they shape our identities. Motivated by my own upbringing and the events that have shaped my sense of self, I seek to connect historical and contemporary narratives in my work. This connection is intended to provoke reflection and dialogue about our shared human condition. And through my art practice, I aim to create a space where viewers can engage with the complexities of identity and the echoes of historical events that continue to influence us today. So a bit of a mouthful there, but COVID really just deeply kind of impacted me. It changed the way that I looked at art. And I was really concerned with academic art and this sort of white cube gallery space. And so there was a lot of reassessment going on. As far as my process goes, it starts with just kind of ideation, right? Thinking about ideas that I wake up with in the middle of the night and write down in my notes app on my phone. I read a lot of different texts. I try to consider relevant contexts. I make a lot of lists. That's like one of my favorite things to do. I am a list maker. Sketching, notes, searching for references, researching historic and present art events, discourse. I go through a lot of revision. I'm very harsh on myself, I think, like any other artist. I do image transfers. I draw and redraw again, which is just the nature of printmaking. And then scraping, burnishing, proofing, and revising and proofing again. And then finally, I get to editioning. The photos that you're looking at here are me rocking a copper plate. And so mezzotint is a form of intaglio printmaking where you are creating millions, literally millions of tiny incisions into the metal. And each one of these incisions will hold ink like a pocket. And so what I do is after I have rocked an entire plate, it will technically be fully black if I were to ink it up. And so I actually am kind of scraping away the darkness to reveal light. And I kind of think of it in that sort of poetic way as I make it and trying to relate it to my subject matter as well. And then there's me, I'm pulling a proof on an etching press there. Mezzotint requires an incredible amount of pressure to print. It's one of the most finicky art forms that I've ever encountered, maybe the most. So again, what is mezzotint? It's an intaglio technique. It, I think, reached its height and popularity around the late 18th century. And you see a couple of different photos here of mezzotint and mock mezzotint. The one to the left is one of Goya's pieces, who I get a lot of inspiration for and kind of directly reference, I think, in a lot of my work. Again, connecting that past and present, and thinking back to the Spanish Inquisition and how Goya dealt with that, his Disasters of War body of work, the Caprices. I also look to a lot of contemporary artists like Catherine Polk, a lot of different painters, funny enough. And yeah, so I mean, that's mezzotint, and I'm happy to talk about that more with anyone. It's sort of difficult to explain. It's a lot easier to show. Excuse me, to show. I can't talk about my current work, though, without talking about past works as well. So like, how did we get here? And each one of my bodies of work is a result of the last one. They all cover different facets of identity. So the first top left photo is a thumbnail of my most recent work. The next photo to the right of that is from a body of work called Limbo. And that's inspired by the 6 parts of a story. So the exposition, the conflict, rising action, climax, falling action, and then resolution. And so you can think of it, if you were to draw a diagram, you would have kind of a straight line, and then you'd have an incline, a climax, and then a decline for the resolution. And so I thought of that as being really, really similar to flying, which was a big part of my childhood, all right, and my identity. So I make a lot of connections with that there, and I apologize for the lawnmower in the background. it will go away. After that, there is a sort of graphic animation of a dog. That print's called Bad Dog, and that comes from my unaccompanied minor series. From age 5 to age 13, my parents were split, I should say, and I would fly on a plane twice a month. So airplanes, flying, travel were a big part of my life. And I was what was considered an unaccompanied minor. That was the designation for a child that was flying alone. And so it kind of represents all sorts of really impactful moments in my life, what I think of as kind of core memories. And then the last one I'll address after that is Icons of Confessions, which involved talking about our innermost secrets and how they play a role in our identity. It involved social practice and audience participation. And what I would do is I had a website set up. I would pose these different questions, and then I would have anonymous sources kind of tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. And then I would make the work about them and kind of share their image so that the participants and me were kind of existing on the same literal plane. And they're also placed on the ground. There was a lot of consideration to the materials and the imagery there. And I can speak more about that here in a moment. These are just some images of those different bodies of work. This one is Limbo. And so I'm using all sorts of different media here. These are cut pieces of wood, all kinds of different prints, collaged and fit together, and then coated in epoxy resin and cut out using a scroll saw. And that was a really, really fun project. These are good representations of the unaccompanied minor series. So from left to right, the left one is called Backflips. And so this was when I tried to do a backflip into a pool and I busted my head wide open. And it's just kind of a pivotal memory for me. I remember my dad wasn't worried at all, though. He told me to just jump in the shower and put a towel on it, as I was just like kind of bleeding everywhere. In the center, it's funny enough, a lot of these have to do with injuries. This one, this is an ambulance and a dog there, and I had my bottom lip, the center of it, bit off and eaten by a chow chow one day before we were about to go to the lake. And then the one all the way to the right is called the cul-de-sac, and it represents the area where I would play when I was a kid. The airplane also there again. You also see a lot of different architecture in my work because I grew up in a developing area and there was all kinds of construction going around. And I'm going to hurry up here. Going past this. So this was Limbo. Again, having to do with secrets. It was based on the saying, digging up dirt. And so the green triangles that you see, the green pyramids, that's actually acoustic foam, which helps to kind of dampen sound. And so I'm helping to keep the secrets.
I messed up here, honey. I messed up a little.
What's that? Oh, sorry. I thought it was a question. And then finally, my most recent body of work. This is the when you see on the website, it's YPNGTLWIHTS. And so that stands for you're probably not going to like what I have to say. And that body of work, it served as an outlet for my personal expression, criticism, and a method for inviting discussion and debate about all the things that were transpiring after the pandemic. And I still see the effects today, especially with the election coming. I've been influenced by everything from personal familial disagreements, internal dialogue, and reassessing my own personal biases, and observing public interactions in general across the country. A few more of these pieces, again, all mezzotint. And so when I create these, it's not that I'm just fascinated or some kind of pyro. What I see when you see a burning house, I see burning comfort, burning familiarity, burning treasure, your values, everything that you hold most dear. As far as moving forward, I just want to continue to consider the times and question whether or not the work that I'm making is still relevant. Does the work have a calling in another medium? Right. So would it make sense to make it in some other way? What medium would increase the impact? And then just branching off from this line of inquiry, what could be a new direction? So those are all different things that I'd like to explore in the future. So thank you again for listening and being here for my keynote. If there's any questions, I'd love to answer them. I think we may have time for that in the breakouts. But thank you again.
Thank you, Zach. And thank you to all of our fellows this year. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dominica, and she's going to randomly assign you to the rooms. I think she may need to put the artists in the rooms first, and then you'll travel to those breakout rooms. And then, of course, you can go from room to room as you want to, but we're going to send you to a random room to start with. So. And I'm going to hang out here in the main room with Dominica for a little bit. So if you have any questions for me or about the program or TFA or West Virginia State University's Extension Service, I'd be happy to talk to you here. Thanks, everybody, for attending. I hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I loved all of these presentations. Great job, everybody. And yeah, I'm going to split us all up into breakout rooms here in just a second. But know that you can, once I put you in your first breakout room, you can pop around. You should have controls to do that. And if you ever get lost, just return to the main room with me and Robbie and we'll get you situated. Okay? I'm going to open the breakout rooms and we'll see you around.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, you all should be getting invitations to join breakout rooms soon.
I see Booger outside. Hey, little buddy. Oh, not muted. Dang it.
All right, who's still here? Is anybody having difficulties accepting the invite? I see someone just titled Zoom user is here. Zoe is here. Hey, Mary.
It kicked me out. Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi. Do you have a request of where you want to be?
I was just with Matt, but
Why did it kick you
I
out?
don't have a preference. It just took me to Matt, but then I got booted.
I think on the bottom in the menu under more, it'll have breakout rooms, and then a little pop-up screen will come up and you can choose.
Okay. Thank you. Oh yeah, it just I don't know why. Did you pull me back? Did you yoink me?
I did
Oh,
not
I don't know
yoink.
why. I don't know why I yoinked. Okay.
TFA gravitational pull.
We just missed you, Mary.
We're just such a family, you guys.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording because everybody's gonna have their conversations in their breakout rooms.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Bye.